is because these antibodies recognize basically patterns. They recognize repetitive patterns of glycans that are simply shared amongst those viruses. So what is happening, and that is pretty dramatic, is that if you start immunizing people with, the type of vaccines that we are using, and you induce vaccinal antibodies that have high affinity for the virus, these antibodies can now outcompete the innate antibodies. And that is problematic because, as I was saying, these innate antibodies, they protect you against a number of viral respiratory diseases, like the coronavirus, like influenza, etc. And they are also self-protective. Not going to go too much in detail, but self-protective means that these antibodies, the primary role of these innate antibodies that you get as of birth, is that they will prevent antigens that resemble self-antigens, so antigens of your own body. They will eliminate those so that they don't lead to autoimmune disease. So you can imagine if you're now going to suppress these innate antibodies because you vaccinate people, and especially children, then of course there is a reasonable risk that you may be inducing a number of autoimmune diseases, and on top you will take away the protection of, for example, children against a number of viruses that normally cause infection in children, but that do not cause disease. For example, influenza is not a childhood disease. Coronavirus is not a childhood disease. And you substitute this kind of precious immunity by a very specific type of immunity, the vaccinal antibodies that we know already, and Omicron is the nicest current example, or no longer very active against this virus, or no longer really capable of neutralizing the virus. So that is a very dramatic situation, essentially because what we know as well is that this innate immunity, just like naturally acquired immunity that you get once you have gotten the disease and you recover from the disease, they have activity against a broad range of variants, and they can also use sterilizing immunity. Innate immunity can really eliminate the virus, and that is very important because that contributes to herd immunity. So that means that by vaccinating large parts of the population, you will also take away the opportunity for this population to develop herd immunity, because as we all know, as I was saying, the vaccines, they do not induce sterilizing immunity. On the contrary, they generate a breeding ground for more infectious variants to replicate and to transmit, because they offer them a competitive advantage. So it is in fact just the opposite of herd immunity. In other words, if you would ask me to take some measures to prevent at any price herd immunity from establishing, then I would say, well, the best thing you can do is to vaccinate large parts of the population in the midst of a pandemic with vaccines that cannot induce sterilizing immunity, because then for sure you will generate a background on which more infectious variants will flourish. And as we have seen, this leads exactly to the opposite of herd immunity, namely an increase in the infection rate in the population. So these are the two major points I wanted to convey, that these mass vaccination campaigns have been largely, or those who have taken this initiative have been largely underestimating the evolutionary capacity of the virus to escape from an incomplete immune response. And secondly, that on top, they can also interfere with a very precious and very important part of the immune system, at least as far as coronaviruses are concerned, namely innate immunity, and thereby prevent, in fact, the population from developing herd immunity, exchanging a type of immunity that is sterilizing in nature for a type of immunity that is just doing the opposite and just basically offering a breeding ground to the virus, to more infectious variants to replicate and to transmit and to increase, in fact, in prevalence in the population. So the high infectious variants that are the result of this are extremely problematic. And if now, in contrast to the start of the pandemic, we see now children indeed that to some extent get a disease, the reaction to that or the solution should not be to vaccinate these children, because we know that the fact that they contracted disease is due to the high infectious pressure in the population. And so if we would not have these high infectious strains that are circulating, we would still have a situation like when the Wuhan strain came in, where basically children and young people and in fact all people who were in good health were not experiencing any problems. So that is the situation where we should try to get back to, but it's exactly the opposite. If we continue mass vaccination and the more we include new groups that have not been vaccinated so far, the worse it will be. I'll stop there for the time being, and please over.
All right, thank you, Gert. So I guess that that shows that the current vaccine rollouts could be, in fact, quite the opposite effect of what we want, encouraging more variants, promoting more infection and compromising immune systems, which is particularly concerning for the younger population as well, I suppose concerning for everyone.